Okay, the clock says it's 7 p.m., so we're going to begin this Planning and Transportation Commission meeting. May I remind everybody to please turn off all cell phones and any other noise-making devices. Okay, and all conversations. Shh. Thank you. Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. 5 commissioners are present. We're missing Commissioner McTighe and Commissioner O'Reilly. All right, so we're going to lead off with, I have one speaker card for a public comment not on the agenda, so I'm going to, if anyone else wants to speak on an item not on the agenda, give me a speaker card, but right now I'm going to call Kate Coughlin to the podium.
Hello, good evening. My name is Kate Coughlin, and I represent an artist named Lucian Nan. He specializes in custom public art, large-scale art panels. And so what I wanted to ask today is if there are any upcoming opportunities for public artwork or calls for artists for Lucian on his behalf.
It might be a good idea to attend our public art commission meetings and see if there are opportunities through that organization.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware that was a separate.
If you go to the city's website, there's a link to the Public Art Commission, and you can find out more information, including their next meeting agenda and schedule. That might be a good opportunity to introduce yourself.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, with that, it looks like we're closing public comment on items not on the agenda. Unless Roberta, I'm assuming you're not. Yeah, right. Okay, all right, so that part is closed. We're going to move on to the consent calendar, which consists solely of the PTC minutes from July 20th. Do I have comments on that?
I would, yeah.
I do, yeah. So go ahead, you guys.
Jump right in.
Yeah.
I just had a correction on, is that page 4 of 5? Under action, I believe McTighe was here. I think it was O'Reilly that was absent.
Yes, at the bottom of page, whatever page that is. I saw the same one. Right, there's a mistake in O'Reilly being present and McTighe being absent on that last item number 5. Are there other comments?
Yeah, I would change my first comment to does not recognize concerns of neighbors. Supposed to. It says now.
Are you talking about item 5 as well? Or what are you?
Under your bullet? Under my bullet, yeah. Under the minutes, item 5.
Item 5.
My first bullet.
So how could you?
You should say, does not, after the tone deaf.
Mm-hmm.
Does not recognize concerns of neighbors and maybe impact on city.
Right.
Be clearer.
Okay. I also, Anita, did you have? No, okay. I want to comment on that, my comments under item 5. So I did say, first bullet, that it's a waste of the community's time. I also said it's a waste of community, staff, councils, and commission. So why don't we just say waste of everyone's time to have to argue about elevator heights? I think in the third bullet, that didn't actually make sense to me. I think what that was supposed to be is attitudes aside, it is unconstructive to limit elevators and elevator towers to unrealistic heights. I don't believe I said it's unrealistic issue. I mean, that's not it. So unconstructive to limit elevator towers to unrealistic heights. Any other comments to the minutes?
I would just like to add that, my issue was just that I didn't think it was that it was mandated by the density, that I didn't want to set the precedent because I didn't think it was mandated by density bonus law that we had to grant the waiver. Not that I had necessarily an issue with the height.
Is that an additional bullet, or are you revising
Yeah,
one
you can
that's
just
there?
add.
Oh, add. Okay, I think then that's the amendments that have been made. Do we have a motion on the minutes?
I move the, after you, my dear.
I'll move to accept the minutes as amended with the notes just spoken.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, so 5, nothing with 2 absent. All right, then we're going to move forward to the public hearing. This is structured, at least per the agenda, to have 2 separate items. I think the discussions will blur, but we'll try to follow that format a little bit. Well, maybe more than a little bit if we're doing well tonight. And though I will admit that pretty much almost all the speaker cards identify item number 2 rather than number 3. But again, if your comments cover both, feel free to go ahead and make them all in your item number 2 discussion. So with that, I'm going to ask staff to do the report on the amendments to the CT Zone District El Camino corridor.
Thank you very much, Chair Meadows, members of the Planning and Transportation Commission, John Biggs with the Community Development Department. You are looking at a couple of ordinances this evening. The first pertains to the CT amendments, the CT Zone District amendments. That's the commercial thoroughfare along the El Camino Real. And then the second ordinance that you're looking at this evening is the density bonus regulations, and it's a significant change to the current density bonus regulations that we have in our municipal code. Now this ain't working. All right. Go on to the next slide. The last time you took up the density bonus regulations was back in April of this year, April the 20th, you had your meeting. You continued the discussion on the CT regulations, to have staff take a look at the language for the side yard setback requirements. Staff has, we can forward that now. Staff has gone back and listened to can forward the slide. Staff has gone back and listened to the tape of that meeting from the prior meeting and amended the language that's in the draft ordinance in front of the Planning and Transportation Commission this evening. That language indicated that there would be an average of 7 feet 6 inches with a minimum setback of 4 feet along the interior side yard setback. And then for side yard setbacks along a street, again, the average of 7.5 feet with a minimum of 4 feet. An average of 15 feet. We can advance the slide. That wasn't the only thing or the only change to the density or the CT regulations that the Planning and Transportation Commission has been looking at. There were a number of other standards within the municipal code that the Commission has been reviewing and discussing over these last several months. And I put up on the screen a table that shows the comparison between the current ordinance and the proposed amendment to the ordinance. As you can see, there are some recommended amendments to the specific purposes section of the code, added residential, including affordable housing, in the list of specific purposes. Regarding the list of permitted and conditionally permitted uses, you moved up multiple family housing and mixed-use projects to the list of allowed uses. It means that they would not require a conditional use permit to begin the approval process for those projects or types of projects. Side yard setbacks, where we currently have no side yard setback required. You have recommended or have reviewed a recommendation to change the side yard setbacks to actually impose a side yard setbacks now for projects. The height of the structures, under the current zoning regulations, the height limit is 45 feet. You've taken a close look at the various height requirements and contemporary construction methods for structures, and your recommendation was to change that height limit to 47 feet and 49 feet, the 47 feet being for either a purely commercial building or a purely multiple family building, and then the 49 feet would be for a mixed-use building with commercial development on the lower floor. This is the one section of the amendment that we've received the most comments about, and I would recommend that you maybe come back to this part of your recommendation and take a close look at that and see if you want to move forward with the recommended increase in the height limits. The other items, open space, rooftop uses, mechanical parking, loading space requirements, those we presently have no standards for in our zoning code. And the ordinance in front of the PTC this evening does include standards for all those types of site development opportunities. So that is new to the code and something that would provide greater protections in the future and greater opportunities to review projects. And finally, the height limitations pertaining to structures above the height limit, such as an elevator structure. You have the current code recommends or has 12 feet listed as the maximum height, and you're recommending a change to that would be the minimum necessary to accommodate mechanical and structural elements for a structure that's on the roof. Next slide, please. I wanted to go back and talk to the PTC a little bit more about the Village Court corner. This is at the corner of the El Camino Real and San Antonio Road. We had talked earlier about the zoning designation for the property. In response to some emails and questions that I have received from some of the property owners near this site, we've taken another look through our zoning codes and records, and we found a bit more clarification that we wanted to provide to the Planning and Transportation Commission and to the public. Interestingly enough, when we go through the records, we find that the underlying zoning designations for the entirety of the site remain R110 for the portion that you see there in yellow, and it has the R110 designation, and then CT, commercial thoroughfare designation, for the portion of the Village Court site that abuts El Camino Real and San Antonio Road. Those zonings have not changed other than a change to the name of the zone districts, but that underlying zone district still remains. Now, having said that, back in 1962, there was a use permit granted by the City Council that put a PUD overlay over the entire site, and that's the 62 PUD-C7. That planned unit development permit governs the use on the entire property, that area that's outlined there in the heavy blue line. And that, given our current zoning code requirements and the zoning code requirements back then, actually gets labeled on our zoning map. And any amendment to that particular zoning designation, that PUD designation, would have to go back through a public hearing process. But that designation runs with the land and it governs the uses and development of the site. So I just wanted to make that clarification this evening. Next slide. This takes us then into our, any questions regarding the CT?
Just a quick question, and the 62 PUD/CT has no expiration?
That is correct.
Okay.
Then we move on to the density bonus regulations. You last took a look at these regulations in June of 2017. There were a number of amendments that you wanted to see made to the draft ordinance. Just wanted to remind the Planning and Transportation Commission that the density bonus regulations apply citywide and are not specific to any one zone district, but they apply to all the zone districts. Next slide. One of the amendments you wanted to see was the introduction of a definition for waivers, and we have included that in the draft before the PTC this evening. You can see on the screen our attempt at defining waiver, and it's meant to be a reduction in development standards that has the effect of physically precluding the construction of a development at the densities and with the concessions or incentives provided by this chapter. There was another request that we get rid of one or the other term, concession or incentives. However, when I was looking at the state's density bonus regulations, they seem to use those two terms throughout that document. And just to remain consistent with the state's density bonus regulations, I felt it was important to keep it in our zoning code as well. That way we have things covered in case the state makes a change to those density bonus regulations in the future. And as you're probably aware, the state want to make frequent changes to our density bonus regulations. Next slide. Density bonus standards, the first bullet there on the slide. One of the things that we were recommending to be included in the ordinance was that in addition to the plans that show the density bonus project, that an applicant submit plans that reflect a project that conforms to the zoning regulations and site development standards of the zone district that the project is located in. So we've included that as part of the standards for the application. And then we wanted to make sure and make it clear that the incentives or concessions, that they only get applied once. So if you seek a height exception, you get one height exception for the project. If you seek or need another type of incentive or concession, you would then have to go to somewhere else on the list to try and wrap that or incorporate that into your project. Next slide, please. Open space, this is one of the incentives and the caps or limits that we have on the incentives. There was some language in the first draft of the ordinance that came in front of the Planning and Transportation Commission that was not clear, so we've cleared that up and made sure that it replies to any open space requirement per the zone district. It could be reduced by 20%, so long as the landscaping complies with the water and efficient land use regulations. And then there were a number of other edits throughout the document that we've incorporated at different spots. Next slide, please. Just wanted to reiterate once more that our density bonus regulations are a little bit unique in the state of California. I think we've provided two other examples in your packet of other cities that have this incentives menu that provides a cap or limit on the extent of a concession or an incentive that a developer can request. And we have those for the side yard setback, lot coverage setback, lot widths. Next slide, please. Floor area ratios and height, so that we know up front and the developer can be informed up front what the city it would be considering as an acceptable incentive or concession to explore as they go through and try and develop a project for a given site. Next slide. And then finally, the open space requirement is one additional incentive that is a potential incentive or concession that a developer can seek. I believe that's the last slide of things that we wanted to review with the PTC this evening. Again, you are developing a recommendation on the CT zoning code amendments to the council, along with a recommendation on the density bonus ordinance. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions for clarification?
I have one. Have the caps and limits that we are seeking to include in our code, have they passed judicial test yet? Are they in the courts at the moment? Has anybody challenged LAs, for example?
Not that I am aware of.
Okay.
And we've had our city attorney review our code, so he's aware of what the code contains and what you're considering this evening.
Okay, thank you.
We received this letter July 25th from the Department of Housing, which seems to identify a couple provisions specifically that they are advising us against implementing. Have we tweaked those?
We have not. This came in kind of last minute just before we sent out the packet, so we included it in the packet, but we didn't have a chance to go back and amend the ordinance in response to the state's comments.
Yeah, so, I mean, reading the report, which doesn't even allude to that letter, and then all the wordings that are potentially inconsistent, I felt that was really an awkward position to put us in, and I'm also surprised to see Mr. Chris is not here this evening. I don't understand why we don't have our legal representative when clearly this is so tied up in what the state requires us to do. I don't know if that's a question or a statement.
I'm
So we have we do not have our legal representative here tonight.
We do not have legal representation present this evening. They have reviewed the ordinance, however, and they felt that it complies with the state density bonus laws.
So are you comfortable as staff in presenting this to us that if we were hypothetically to recommend to City Council that it be adopted, that you would be confident that our city attorney would be willing to stand behind it in light of this additional information?
As far as I'm looking at the ordinance this evening, yes. If you would like, however, some additional feedback on the part of the city attorney, we can certainly ask. You can propose continuing the item so that we can get that information and determination from them.
Any other questions or clarification? No?
Yes. Thank you. Just going back to the 62 PUD.
Yes.
So can the owner decide to just abandon the PUD, and then do they automatically step into the CT, or how does that, what's the process for which it could flip back into?
I don't believe that the owner could just automatically abandon that CUT, given the way the zoning code is written, that the PUD designation runs with the land. So if an owner wanted to change that, I see three potential avenues as I sit here this evening. One is to apply to amend the existing PUD. Two is to apply for a new PUD for the site. And three would be to apply to amend that PUD and change the underlying zoning designations. All of those would require public hearings and public review and public notification.
Sean, excuse me, couldn't they also ask to just abandon the PUD and go to the underlying zoning?
That's not the way I read it, because it's real clear in our code that PUD designation runs with the land.
Okay, thank you.
And future owners need to comply with it.
And then my other questions were just with the wording or intent on the CT regulations. On page 2, 14, 50, 100, what's this? For all structures 30 or less in height and 100 feet for all structures over 30 in height. Do you intend for that to be, meaning it steps back, or the whole thing has to be within those setbacks?
It would be the structure stepping back. So
At beyond 30, so 30 feet, and then beyond 30 feet it's
Exactly.
back. Yeah, I just,
sort of that
Wording.
wedding cake type
Okay.
of approach to the zoning code.
and
I'm struggling
Which one?
with how we go forward with this.
Well, I think we go forward to public comment. There's a lot of public here, and then we bring it to discussion and decide how we're going to go forward with it. Because I think it's important. We have a slew of cards here, and I think we should, please, if there's more cards, please bring it up. I would like to give everyone the chance to speak. So, but, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so are we done with our clarifications, reserving our discussion for later? Okay. All right, we've got quite a few cards. I'm going to give everyone, can we do 2.5 minutes? Will that be too complicated? Are we restricted to whole number increments?
Sure, I know how to do that.
Yeah. Well, if we can't do that, I'll stick with 3, but Marcia, you were the only one who actually gave me 2 cards. Everyone else said 2 and 3 or whatever, so I'd like to ask you to make your comments in one statement rather than 2. So we'll go ahead then and give everybody 3 minutes. You do not have to use all 3 minutes. I'm going to line you up. We're going to start with Fred Habensack, who will be followed by Lily, who will be followed by Mersha. Okay, Fred.
Hello, Commissioners. Thank you for the time to speak here. And I also want to thank you for protecting the residents' values on the June 20th meeting with the 4880 El Camino request. So thank you for that. I'm Fred Habensack. I live in Los Santos Square, and I'm here promoting the message for the petition to preserve the neighborhood character for the El Camino corridor. A number of others are here tonight in support of the petition. Could you guys raise your hands to say if you're in support? So we have quite a few folks. Thank you very much for showing up. We have over 300 signatures now, and that's about 20% of the CT zone in the nearby neighborhood population has signed. Dave and Emily Walter send their regrets. They're in Hawaii right now for some reason, and they wish they could have been here, and they sent their comments by mail. Let me first start by saying that the first sentences of the petition that we're talking about say, reject developments that exceed a maximum height of 45 feet, retain the height criteria in the CT zone as a maximum total height, and redefine the CT zone height so that 45 feet is never exceeded. Very clear. So I and others have proposed how we can do this in the notes that I have sent you, and this is based on reviewing some of the history. The increase from 35 to 45 feet for residential developments in the CT zone in 2010 was motivated to provide for affordable housing, but it really has not been effective. There has not been a proliferation of affordable housing. 4880 El Camino is a good example of what has been proposed recently, 2 to 3 bedrooms with 10-foot ceilings and luxury amenities. It's not affordable housing. But the proposal you have in front of you is literally codification of the 4880 El Camino development, not in line with the residents' values and not affordable housing. And for mixed use, the plan you have here goes even higher, up to 72 feet, if I do my math right. So our current proposal to correct this is by amending the 2010 amendment ordinance, go back to 35-foot heights, and implement the new density bonus ordinance that you have in front of you, which in combination will truly encourage affordable housing and respect the residents' values. So let me address one thing. Why 45 feet? What's magical about this? We believe the 45-foot height will be good for the city and residents because, one, it will respect residents' values adjacent to the large developments, but also in general to provide some limits to growth that is now impacting our schools' traffic and parking. Number 2, it will also provide an important degree of affordability through market forces, not government programs, by discouraging large-sized condominiums. There's nothing wrong with 8-foot ceilings, 1 to 2 bedrooms, and maybe a studio. This element that I'm talking about is supported by the nascent YIMBY movement, which literally calls for providing more choices of sizes and prices. And third, 45-foot limit will still enable room for more growth and modernization. There's still plenty of room for vertical growth on El Camino. So we don't want to be a NIMBY city. Let's embrace higher density of the accepted 38 units per acre in the way that we want as a city that truly enables affordable housing and protects residents' values like you did for us last week. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Lily, followed by Mersha, and then it will be Jennifer Shepard.
Hi, I'm Lily Najimi. I'm a resident of North Los Altos. Now that we are looking at incorporating new laws for CT zone and bonus density, let's take a look at history of Los Altos, its value, and its mission that we need to incorporate into these laws. In 1952, Los Altos fought for its incorporation. Some Los Altos believed that if they became part of Mountain View, it will destroy the privacy that they cherished. They fought and won the Los Altos Incorporation on December 1, 1952. Los Altos has continued to grow and prosper and yet keep its values. Los Altos celebrated its 60th anniversary in 2012, establishing city ordinance as green building practices, formation of Greentown Los Altos, and city designation as bicycle community. Los Altos has continued to grow and prosper, yet keep its mission and values. The mission of City of Los Altos is to foster and maintain Los Altos as a great place to live and raise a family. As a proud Los Alton, we chose to live in Los Altos because of its quiet character and its green space and the community values it represents. Here we are in 2017, not fighting with Mountain View residents for incorporation, but with Mountain View developers asking for the same rules for Los Altos properties, such as higher heights and a smaller green space, whereas the Los Altos properties are much smaller than Mountain View. Mountain View and it borders residential communities, so it should follow a different rule than the large developments that are going on in large lands in Mountain View that doesn't border residential communities. This threatens the very essence of what makes Los Altos special and comforting. So as Los Altos residents, keeping in line with Los Altos values, what we are asking for is what Fred was asking for. And so I'm just summarizing it because he already explains it. 45 feet maximum height, including the density bonus law exceptions. So that's 34 feet for city zone plus 11 feet for density bonus, bring it up to a total of 45, not exceeding that with all the exceptions. Allow for green space, safe sidewalk, bicycle paths, and a range of different size housing options, including smaller units. The new developments in Los Altos with increased building heights have not provided a solution for affordable housing. The current developments in Los Altos with 2 and 3 bedroom units with 10, 11, and 12-foot ceilings are not affordable units. They are luxury units. The 48 ATL Camino with all the bonus density exception raising the height from 45 feet to 69 feet only provided 3 below market rate units. Thank you so much for your attention, and let's get together to find a real solution for affordable housing. So all of our
Thank
the
you.
people in Los
Now,
Altos-
Mersha, followed by Jennifer Shepard, and then Joanne Kilner.
Yeah, my name is Mircha. I'm the owner of the 4046, 4056 El Camino Real, and a developer. First of all, I just wanted to thank John and the staff for being able to work for the last 8-9 months to get this project where we are today. And I'm sure it was a lot of work from everybody, and I want to say I really appreciate it. I'm also like to say that I understand that this could become very emotional, but I have to say that that's why the state makes the laws, for us not to get emotional. And it's not up to us, not to me, to make those decisions. So I'm glad that housing community development came up and kind of start, helping us, educating us, the public, and being able to offer us an opportunity to say that what we need to do. And I have a couple of comments based on the drafts that were done. One of the items that we asked to do is to submit a design that conforms to the zoning standards to prove that we need those incentives. Well, this is a huge expense, and it's not really necessary because anyone can put a design together that does not work. So, I mean, that part of the paragraph, it doesn't really make any sense. So I just want to bring it up to you as a comment and feedback. Another thing, it's parking reductions. They are shown as concession and incentives. Actually, I studied this one, and you can check with the city attorney. The state clearly defined those as waivers. Parking, it's not an incentive. It's not a concession. So this is something that needs to be looked at and agreed. As the state stated, the on and off menu, they don't follow their laws. That's where they stopped. And, I don't have any problems from my standpoint, but I just want to bring it up to you. And also like this statement where, the developer will say, we're going to go one incentive and you're going to give 1 feet and you can use only once for the height. Again, it's against the state laws. And that could easily be looked up by city attorney. Another thing that I want to bring it up, I spoke with Mark Berman about this, and he's going to have his own comments to City Council and the city to be able to be in support of the housing in this area. And he also mentioned, quote, this SB 35 that is going out through approvals in the Sacramento, that the state is working now on a couple of options to offer developers opportunities to move faster through the process and in some instances just bypass city council. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, Jennifer Shepard, followed by Joanne Kilner, and then Suzanne Bailey. Do we not have Jennifer? I neglected to mention, please be sort of poised to take your place at the podium.
I'm Jennifer Shepard, and I'm a resident of Laux Avenue, about halfway down the block to Los Altos Avenue. And I'm very opposed to any additional height to the building at the corner. We have already suffered a whole lot of additional traffic because of the buildings in Mountain View, which are right down the street from us. We have a tremendous amount of traffic and went through a whole lot of appeal to have some traffic bumps put on our street. We have no sidewalks, no place to walk, and our street is a busy pedestrian street. So I'm totally opposed to any elevation that's not required by law.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, Joanne Kilner will be followed by Suzanne Bailey, and then Darren Jones.
Okay, I'm on Laux Avenue. I've been there since 1967, and the traffic has got worse and worse and worse. And I feel if you build these huge things like you have in Mountain View, that our traffic is going to get impossible. We just recently had a car that turned over a few times and almost could, with one more turn, would have gone through the person's front window. And also the lady across the street from me had her car hit twice, and at that point decided to not park in front of her house anymore. I feel that 45 feet is enough, and 2 stories is plenty, because anybody that's going north from any apartments you put down at Village Corner will go through Laux, because otherwise there's no other way they can get north. They'll go down Laux and then Los Altos Avenue. And I don't think we need any additional traffic. So the smaller the apartment house is, I would like to see none there at all. But if you got to put one, make it 45 feet so they can't put in a bunch more stories like they have in Mountain View, and then they won't look like those horrible things at Sears. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Just for clarification, there is no building going in at Village Corners, and the zoning is staying as the PUD. So that,
Overlay.
yeah.
Also, I'd want to point out, we have this front seat that has a little ticket on it that says reserved for next speaker.
Yeah.
So anybody who wants to come and make use of that. So
To
we
be
can keep
ready,
this moving.
yeah, so we keep moving here. Go ahead.
Yes, hello, I'm Suzanne Bailey, and I live at 1043 Mercedes Avenue, right off Laux Avenue, and I'm also here in support of the Friends of El Camino Los Altos, and requesting that the maximum height limit be 45 feet with this new zoning. I was here at your meeting in April, where you did discuss the corner lot, although the entire discussion was that we're really not discussing the corner lot. So we haven't had any information, and I just wanted to let you know that we were not noticed in our neighborhood about this meeting, and I don't know what the requirement is, but this is a lot going on. The only reason I know about it is because I received a flyer from the Friends of Los Altos. My neighbors weren't noticed, and there are a lot of people, I think more people, that would be here if they had been noticed about this meeting and what was going on. Thank you.
All right. Just as a point of clarification, all public hearings are noticed in the town crier. I realize we don't read that section. I personally don't, but or
And
not
that's
too often
so you don't
yeah.
provide mailings?
No, we do when they're, actually, John, do you want to
Even though
address
I was
that?
here and filled out a speaker card last time and
Wait,
I wasn't
let John-
noticed?
Let John address the question.
We do have a mailing list. I think it's property owners and tenants within 300 feet, or 500 feet, excuse me, of the CT zone district gets sent a notice in the mail.
For every single meeting?
Yes, for every single meeting that isn't continued to a date specific.
Ah.
So, but I think we've sent out 1, 2, 3, at least 3 notices on this hearing.
So for this meeting, you would have sent out
We sent out notices.
notices?
Yes.
Even though I was a speaker at the last one and
Well,
said I
the
was
being a
interested-
speaker has, no, the notices
you
are
don't have
determined
a
by
list?
geographic distribution. But we need to.
Not by interest?
No, we need to move forward with, no, not by interest, but sorry. Okay, Darren Jones, followed by Mary Skargard, and then Mariel Stoops.
Hi, I'm Darren Jones. I'm a 17-year resident of Los Altos, and it strikes me that there's competing things going on here. Back in 2010, I think Fred said that one of the purposes of the rise in height then was to encourage affordable housing and more residents. It strikes me that that's the exact same thing that the density bonus law is wanting to do. So I kind of see it that Los Altos was ahead of the curve, but now are we getting double counted against us in that? And when I say against us, it's because there's a state law that's sort of one size fits all, which is the density bonus law. But here in Los Altos, it was incorporated with this idea of very low-slung development. The commercial CT zone was specifically abutted against R1 single-family homes. There's not a buffer zone there, so there's a requirement in the CT zone description that it says it must act as a buffer. So it feels like we're getting sort of height and then more height. So I'm very much in favor of somehow looking at both the CT zone and the density bonus and setting that maximum at 45. I agree 100%. I think that's an acceptable maximum, and I think there's a lot that developers can do with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Mary, and then Mariel, and Roberta Phillips.
Mary Skugard, 1055 Room Lane. 40 years of fighting for proper development along El Camino next to the prime residential property that we purchased. The village court PUD at that time addressed the situation of adequate setbacks and adequate height next to R1 residential. A similar idea should be incorporated for other people along there. There is no small lot buffer anywhere. You've got these big high-rise buildings along El Camino right smack up against somebody's backyard with the 2- and 3-year-olds playing out there. Come on. That isn't right. And so that needs to be taken care of there. 45 feet, I think, is certainly a maximum height. I don't think there's any need to go any further. That's tall enough. It blocks wind, it blocks air, vision, light, sun, whatever. And that would mean that the density bonus, I think it was suggested earlier, that should include the density bonus. That's fine to have the density bonus. Fine to have places for people who want to have a low-income property, but not when you add it on top of other buildings that are overseeing residential streets. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Mariel, followed by Roberta, followed by Fareydun Jamzadeh, and sorry in advance. Go ahead, Mariel.
Thank you, Mariel Stoops. I want to just echo everything that Fred shared today, because everything he has said, it couldn't have been said in a more succinct way. Second point I want to say is I came here on January 20th when the first discussions on the CT amendments took place. And I want to echo my other neighbors on Laux. I pointed out that no notifications were sent to anyone on Laux. And at that time I said, you are looking at historic levels of height, and you're not advising people who are going to be immediately impacted There's no other street more greatly impacted than Laux Avenue. So for you to have this discussion here today and not acknowledge that something is to change, it's unacceptable. I think it's time for John and for David Cornfield to take note and make a change. Look at expanding this communication way in paper, right? Acknowledging that you need to let people know about what's going on the El Camino corridor. And everyone on Laux should receive a notice, as well as Mercedes. So that is my request. And if you can advise on what I need to do, whether I need to do a petition or how do we make this change, I would be so grateful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Roberta Phillips, followed by Fareydun, and then Josh Barus.
Hi, everyone. Roberta Phillips, Los Altos. So I did send you all an email that included the ordinance change that we found. So basically in 2010, under David Cassis and Ron Packard, they changed the CT zone height limits following the change of the height limits to 45 feet down on First Street. And the ordinance, the intention of the ordinance was to provide greater flexibility to achieve high-quality commercial projects and support economic development in the Los Altos Business District. It was also intended to encourage affordable housing. Height limits were changed from 30 feet for commercial, 35 feet for residential, and 40 feet for mixed use. These changes were never intended to permit buildings over 45 feet. I've read all of the California density bonus law and the CT zone changes, and I feel that the intention of the original change to provide low-income housing and to have vibrancy on El Camino has really not been a success. And I think we need to look at other means of getting to providing affordable housing. We've had this in place for 7 years. We've had a handful of affordable housing, but obviously going down this path again just doesn't seem to be the right direction to go. I think we need to open it up to new ideas, and the 480 building, when I look at the report, I see that we'll be somewhere between 72 and 75 feet if we allow the ordinance to go through, the ones that would be recommended tonight. It's interesting because right before I came, I was watching the news, and on the news it said in January, the state of California is going to start collecting taxes for the marijuana law, and they're going to be collecting over $1 billion a year. And I was saying to myself, gee, $1 billion a year from the state could really pay for a lot of low-income housing. And I think it's really time that we start looking at alternatives and pushing back on the states and working with other cities so that we can provide low-income housing, but also preserve our town and do what the intention of the law was supposed to do in the first place, and not just keep moving forward, because we really don't have to. Thanks.
Fareydun, followed by Josh Barus, and then Brian Robertson.
Hello, my name is Fareydun Jamzadeh. I've lived in Los Altos for 19 years, and I intend to live another 19 years, hopefully. And the reason I bring that up is because I want to mention and emphasize that my interests are long-term, unlike most developers. So what's going to happen with these zoning, it's going to impact me for long-term. And I hope the Commission considers and respects my point of view. The main point I want to make is the same that most of my neighbors have mentioned. And I want to emphasize that there are two numbers that needs to be written on the code boldly. 34, 45. 34 as the CT zone and 45 as the absolute maximum height, assuming they provide affordable housing. And I want to emphasize affordable housing because from what I've seen, 12-foot ceilings is not considered affordable. I'm living in a house that is multi-million dollars and it's only 8-foot ceilings. So with those, I just want to go back and just emphasize 45 should be absolutely the maximum height, no matter what, no matter the circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh, followed by Brian Robertson, and then Ellen Barron.
Hi, good evening, Chair Meadows and members of the Planning Transportation Commission. My name is Joshua Bruce. I'm representing Silicon Valley at Home, and we're a nonprofit voice advocating for affordable housing here in Santa Clara County. Maybe where the city of Los Altos currently has a low wage jobs to housing ratio of 19 low wage jobs to 13 affordable housing units, with Los Altos only meeting 23% of its affordable housing needs from 2007 to 2014, according to the last RHNA cycle. Thus, the city must take action to adopt a full suite of tools to address its low and middle income affordable housing needs, with tools that include residential impact and commercial linkage fees to serve as a funding mechanism for affordable housing developments, also allowing alternative compliance to the inclusionary zoning ordinance, such as adopting an in-lieu fee, allowing developers to set aside land or to partner with affordable housing developers to meet its housing obligations, also prioritizing affordable housing on city-owned parking lots in underutilized land, allowing for more dense mixed-income and mixed-use developments along key transportation corridors like El Camino Real. And we're really glad the city has had discussions on these tools. Of course, we can be a resource to you and share best practices, data, research, and help the city improve access to affordable housing here in the community. I have a few packets here I can give to the commissioners, which includes our resource guide and information on our organization. So we urge you to take swift action on these tools, and of course, thank you so much for the opportunity to provide input.
Thank you. All right. Brian Robertson, followed by Ellen Barron, and then Bill Moniz.
Hi. So, without getting too emotional, so longtime resident, multi-decade as it turns out, current business owner, but not a resident, developer, so I know I'm the bad guy. Yes, I think affordable housing is grand, and I think there's not enough of it. But the state ties our hands. We don't have a choice. We have to go dense. So the reality is that the affordable housing argument actually is a red herring. The issue facing the city of Los Altos is you're not meeting enough housing units, period. So that requires density, and there's only one place to get it, which is Los Altos. Now, the state of California has made it clear in this letter.
Please focus on us.
The state of California has made it very clear that if we don't meet the housing unit count, they will take over. That means whatever we want, whatever we like, isn't going to matter. So the key to doing that is building higher density along El Camino. It is what it is. So if we don't want to let go, and I think everything that's been drafted in this ordinance, such as it is and defined by staff, is brilliant. And it's because they've listened to the developers about what's rational and makes sense to hitting that target for the city of Los Altos. That said, I do agree that we should have more affordable housing units. I think that's the purpose. The only thing I would advise is that strategically we're going to have to come back and revisit this whole thing about the menu, because it isn't legitimate. It's not legal. Can't restrict incentives. That said, I think that most developers will sit back and come up with something that fits within what the community paradigm is, and provide a product that people want and people like. But ultimately speaking, what you guys have to do is you got to make sure that something gets put up there that encourages high density housing and lots of it. Because as the last time I checked, we are 300 units short, and we are only 5 years away from that. And if we don't hit that target, California is going to come in and say, we're taking over. So what I would suggest is pass the ordinances as it is, be cognizant of some of the changes that have to be made to reflect the growth along the El Camino corridor, and 5 stories is going to look like a dream in 10 years. So, just keep tabs on that and just focus on it. The only thing I would suggest is that, the first thing that should be done after this ordinance is passed, as it stands, is to come back and look at the menu, the regulations around that menu. Other than that, I'd let it go. That's it.
Thank you. Ellen Barron, followed by Bill Moniz, and then Anatol Shmekov.
I may not know all about the state regulations, but it seems to me we're living in a hot, very desirable area. People want to live here. I don't think we need to give incentives to any developers to try and put properties here to get people to move in here. I think we should just mandate that any developer who wants to build something have a limit on ceiling, which is 8 feet, and have X number of affordable housing units in their unit. I don't think they need incentives. There's plenty of incentives just living in Silicon Valley and millions of people wanting to move here. So that's what I thought I wanted to say, and I'm certainly opposed to anything higher than 45 feet. Make it bigger. Put it back into the city a little bit closer. Take some of the other land. Don't take land all around where we're living and have us not even have any sunlight. I can't even grow plants in my front yard anymore because there's no sun coming in from that building next door that used to be the garden center. Thank you.
Okay, Bill, followed by Anatol and Suyan Jin.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, I'm Bill Moniz. I've lived here 35 years. And of course, we've seen lots of changes then, and a lot of them I'm not particularly happy with. This whole idea of the state being able to come in, I'd like to know, is that really a possibility, and what can we do to fight that? Because it's totally ridiculous to have some lawmakers in other parts of the state tell us how we should live, and that's really what they're doing. This whole thing is a real political nightmare in order to satisfy all the people that think affordable housing makes sense in this area. What is affordable housing? To me, affordable housing is what I can afford. To her or you, it could be anything that you can afford. There's no definition of affordable housing. Come on. This is wholly ridiculous, this whole proposition of forcing us and the rest of the state to follow some idiot from Berkeley that wants to do it the right way, okay? Now, okay, so none of this stuff means you can't do any action, but at least that's my personal opinion. So I'm concerned about all the rest of the bonus things, like, are you saying that if a neighbor comes in and tears down the house next to me, that he can have different lot sizes, the open space is going to be reduced, and the side yards are lower? Because I don't know if this density bonus regulation means it affects all of us homeowners, not just the developers on El Camino. So am I off on that as far as, okay, so you're shaking your head. So it's not going to affect me that a guy can come in and tear down his house and move his house to 2 feet away from the fence. Is that correct?
Well, please continue with your statement.
All right, well,
we're not addressing personal questions right now.
All right. So at any rate, I would encourage you folks to fight the state and trying to put us into a position of bending the way we as a community have defined our way of life. And I don't think we need to have somebody from another part of the state tell us how we should live. We've decided to come here on our own volition. We all came here and paid our money. We have a right to live the way we want. We're certainly not trying to keep people out, but if they can't afford it, I mean, that's the way it is. I can't afford a Cadillac or a Tesla. Does that mean that you should subsidize me so I can buy a Tesla? I mean, that's basically what we're talking about here. And all the regulations that we're giving these developers certainly creates more cost to the building of the house or the condominiums or whatever, and it just drives the price of everything up. So if we have less government regulations, we would certainly have maybe more affordable housing. Thank you.
All right. Anatol, followed by Shui Yan, and then
Hi.
Eric Wong.
Hi, my name is Anatol Shmelov. I live at 897 Jordan Avenue. My property abuts two commercial properties right off El Camino, 4920 and 4890 El Camino. And I can only confirm what you've heard before this evening is that that area is rapidly becoming unlivable due to the traffic and the other things that are brought on by the commercial development and the general development in the area. The trouble with developers and commercial property owners is that if you give them an inch, they'll bite off your whole arm. And we see that with regard to the height requirements here. I'll give you an example based on, I spoke here a couple of months ago. I gave you an example of the lack of enforcement of the gas-powered blower situation. The gas-powered blowers came on at 6:45 a.m. this morning. 6:45. This is the way they work, and there's no enforcement. And so what we're here trying to do is to enforce the requirement of 45 feet. Because if you make it 69 feet, then the next time it's going to go up to 82 feet, and then it's going to go up to 100 feet. So I think we really do need to put our foot down and say 45 feet is enough. Enough is enough. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Shuyan Shin? Sorry, please correct and then Eric, and then John Baer.
Hi, my name is Siwan Shin. I'm here with my wife, Shu Yu. We are new residents in Los Altos. We bought our property in last November, which is at 81 Los Altos Square. It's very close to the new El Camino tall building that's being built. We have a newborn baby coming at the end of September. The reason we choose to buy property in Los Altos and live in Los Altos, like all these people talk about, it's safe. It has a good traditional American neighborhood feeling, and of course, number one reason for me is safety. But after I lived here for a half year, what I found is the street is already pretty busy. And every day we come home, there's random cars and random trucks just parking the sidewalks. So I'm deeply concerned with the height increase and of these buildings, which will definitely increase the density of the local areas. And it's going to have more cars and more parkings. And just imagine you have your kids and just playing the neighborhood, and the street is getting more busy. So I don't. Speaking of a homeowner in Los Altos, I don't think the government should just tell people what to do. The government listens to people, and if this is the voice of people, I don't think they should pass laws that's against people's view. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, followed by John Baer, who is the last card I have. So if you plan to speak, then there's still one chance to get me a card.
So I don't want to have any prepared remarks, but I agree with all the residents that have made comments tonight. We bought and moved into Los Altos. I'm a resident of Laux Avenue about 5 years ago. Bay Area native, went to Pali for high school. Lived in San Francisco, had my first child. We decided to leave. We were living in Mission Bay, which, as many of you guys know, is a residential district that's gone increasingly vertical over the years. And when we had our first kid, we decided we had to leave the city, and we looked at where we wanted to be. And we looked at Palo Alto, Menlo Park, Los Altos, Mountain View. And of all the places, I thought coming back home to Palo Alto would be nice. When it came down to it, we liked the character of Los Altos, the space, the quietness of the neighborhoods. And in the 5 years that we've lived here, we had a car speeding on our street, flipped, landed in a neighbor's yard. Now we have speed bumps. After that happens, I tell you, every time I walk my kids down the street around the corner to my in-laws, we take extreme care because someone might be coming down at 45 miles an hour. And I have 2 kids now. My first one is going into first grade at Santa Rita. My second one is 3 years old, and he's going to be at Santa Rita, when he goes to kinders. And so I'm here for the long haul. And when I think about the changes, we moved in. The village at Carmel, at San Antonio was built. The one across the street is now being built. You've got the complex down by Whole Foods. You've got the ones that are further down on El Camino. It's night and day. And so when I think about why we moved here, I start to wonder, why am I still here? And this community, I think when you start going in one direction, there's only one direction that it will continue to go in. And it's very hard to pull back from that. And so when I think about how the character of our city is changing, I get very scared and I get very worried. And, I'm not, I haven't been here for 30 years. I haven't been here for 20 years like a lot of my neighbors. But I look at, my kids going to Egan. I look at them going to Los Altos High. I look at them coming back when they're coming back from college in the winter and the summer and all of those things. And I think about what is this place going to be like, when that, it's that time comes. And I really don't know. And so when I see things going this direction, as a resident, as a homeowner, that plans to be here for decades, I get concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final speaker card I have is John Baer.
The road to hell is often paved with good intentions. The question is, do we get what we expect to get? Are we better off as a community? Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. I was on the Planning Commission when we, in 2010, made recommendations to the council to change the height. We thought we were going to get something good. We either got nothing or we got projects like 4880 El Camino. We have height creep in this town, and it worries me because when I was on the Planning Commission, made changes to the height. We thought that was the height. And then we changed other zoning and requirements, and there were all these bonuses, and the only way to give a developer bonus that they were entitled to was to give them more height. And so I asked the question, did we get what we expect? Some cases we have. Unfortunately, a number of cases we have yet to get what we want. We have constraints. The state is putting in place regulations that say Los Altos is Los Angeles, and we all know it isn't, but the state doesn't give a damn. So the question is, how do you make sure, as a planning commission, that you think through recommendations that comply with state requirements, that get us the things we want, but also protect the people who abut the CT zone? And we're not doing a good job of the latter. We're not doing a good job. And then when the project comes before us, becomes before you, we shrug our shoulders and say, nothing we can do. Or we'll tell the developer to put in a couple of extra trees. We're not doing a good enough job. This is your opportunity to really think through how you protect the people who abut the CT zone. It's critical. It's critical because regardless of what you put in for the height, what's going to get developed is going to be taller. And we can argue that that's good or bad, but that's simply a fact. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that's the end of my card, so I'm going to close public comment period. All right. So now
Ronit had something.
Yes, we have some discussion, and I know that's definitely been simmering over here.
I read the letter from the Department of Housing, and I read it 3 times. And the first time I read it, I thought, oh, they're just giving us some suggestions, and it's like a slap on the wrist. And then I read it again and again.
Actually, do you mind backing up a step and explaining it? Because one of the things I'm disturbed about is there's not even a mention of it in the staff report, and the audience may not be familiar. So just a brief, who the letter's from and what we're referring to.
And maybe staff can enlighten us a little bit, because I see that the letter's dated July 25th. I imagine that someone sent to the Department of Housing a draft of our ordinance, and they prepared a letter directed to the members of the Planning and Transportation Commission. And everyone who is talking about reducing the height to 45 feet should read this letter. It's 4 pages. And among the things that they say is, and this was something we discussed the last time, was that, is if you take the current height and drop it down to 30 and then allow the bonus density another floor, does that violate the spirit of the law? And I think what they're saying here is not only is it violating the spirit of the law, it would violate the letter of the law. And they specifically state, continuing to allow at least 4 stories on CT zone sites without density bonus law is important to promoting development consistent with the housing element. They go on to say that taking any action that's viewed as a serious constraint, like a moratorium, and contrary to planning and zoning law. And they go on to basically say rejecting economic analysis that says you need an extra story for viability, or imposing moratoriums. This is the way I'm reading it, which is why I'd want an attorney, another attorney, to advise me if this is as bad as I think it is, in terms of, what people are asking. I think sometimes a good attorney gets you in a room and says, your case is weak, and you're going to lose, and you're going to pay if you lose. And sometimes you need to hear that because, or maybe they tell you your case is strong, go for it, fight it, you can beat this. But without that guidance, I don't know how to proceed.
Anita.
Yeah, I think you're right about getting good counsel on this, because I actually read the letter a little differently. When you look at the legislative history of our ordinance that moved to 45 feet when, as Mr. Baer said, he was on the Planning Commission, that was done completely on the premise that all the buildings were still going to be 3 stories. And that the additional height was needed to do, allow some flexibility in like mixed use and so on, and still allow 2 stories of housing on top of a taller first floor for retail and so on. But there is no discussion, and I read it all in detail, that it ever conceived of 4 stories within the 45 feet. So when the state says that we would be, it would be problematic, and it's in their viewpoint because they're not citing anything in the statute that we violated in any of that letter about the things that you just mentioned. We've had one project that has 4 stories. One, and that's 4880. If we do nothing except pass the concept of what's here tonight, all we will have done is codify 4880, which I do not believe the state can compel us to do. We have many other options. If we codify this without changing the density, which is not one of the things in front of us, then again, we're still looking at having large square footage and number of units. If we stick with 38 units an acre, and we go to 45, and we go to 4 stories, we say 47 feet, you can do 4 stories. All we have is a bunch of big 2 and 3 bedroom units, and not, at least what I heard from council, where are we going to find greater variety, and I think Mr. Habensack mentioned that, greater variety in some studio and 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. All we're doing is nibbling around the edges. We are not confronting the real issue. I see Council Member Mordeau sitting over there. I think he's pretty well known for loving in lieu fees for parking. And I'm wondering, where's our in lieu program to allow us to build dedicated, all more affordable, because I agree with the gentleman who said, what's affordable? It's what any of us can afford. But something that is, quote, more affordable by virtue of it being smaller. How do we get smaller but not impact traffic? I don't know all the answers to that, but I know that passing this the way we have it tonight without the other issues, without fixing density, without looking at in lieu options, without figuring out where else we're going to build housing, we will have accomplished nothing except irritating everybody in this room and most of your neighbors. And I'm not prepared to do that. And I think we can beat the state. I think the state's wrong.
Okay. Well, so we have different opinions on that. We do not have our lawyer here. He's the one, or she, but in this case it's a he, who has to give us that advice. We're sitting up here with no comment on what we've received,
And two different opinions as how it would be interpreted.
Let me rephrase. I am not suggesting that the language of all of our provisions is going to be challenged. I'm saying that they have identified specific issues, right? I think that we can tweak those. But the larger question, the existential question that everybody here wants us to answer, which is, should we go back to 35 so that when we add a floor, we end up at 45? I think we've debated that already, but maybe we haven't. We debated that last time, and we had opinions without maybe a conclusion about whether we should do that. But I think that whole question, in my mind, is taken out of that question is no longer a question the way I am reading this, where they say
4 stories.
Continuing to allow at least 4 stories. They're not talking about height. They're saying don't even think about doing less than 4 stories before density regulations.
They've got no basis for telling us that, Ronit. They
Well,
really
but-
don't.
but
So
even-
that's why we need. But that's why we need the attorney.
Right. An attorney will tell us you can fight this or you can't.
Right. And regardless of that, and I'm going to step in, I know I'm supposed to wait, but there are simple inconsistencies in the language of the state law versus how we phrased it. I mean, I just, we shouldn't, it needs to be consistent, or else we're just opening it up for, and I agree with the, as I understand it, there were some in council, if not all council, who were in favor of seeing an in lieu program, which could help. I mean, as Anita said, it could help many different ways. And so I just feel like we're looking at what we parked with you, but a lot has gone on since then.
But I would go on to say that time is of the essence, because they go on to say that taking or extending such action, like a moratorium, could warrant immediate action.
Yeah, I think that's the real genesis of this, is that someone wrote and complained about the moratorium and included the draft, and that's what we got, how we got what we got. So I'd be in favor of going through. I mean, I've got some notes about things that I think are problematic in here, irrespective of what the state wrote us about. So maybe we set aside the height issue because of the legal question and deal with the rest of what's in here.
Alex, you haven't said anything? Do you have?
No, I'm just, in my mind, it's, do we cut our losses? Let people go home? Or, I mean, we can't, in my opinion, there's really not much that we can do because we have so many questions that we need a live body to be able to have a fruitful discussion with.
As in the lawyer?
Correct. So,
yeah, I just don't really understand why. I mean, we don't even have an opinion from him. There's just nothing.
Well, again, remember, this was submitted just before the packet went out. It was part of the public comment that we received. We have an agenda deadline to get the presentation and the reports to you along with the ordinances, so that's what we've done.
That's a week.
Part
I mean,
of
he
the,
could have gotten
but they have to notice it
we have to
officially,
notice
so
it.
there's that
So
piece.
this is part of the
There's a
packet that
noticing
we've
that.
received. You can certainly continue this to the next meeting, and we can have the city attorney or a representative from his office be here to answer your questions and address the comments that you have here. Your other option is, if you feel strongly that what the state is recommending here, you can recommend that we go back and amend the ordinance draft to incorporate what the state is suggesting be incorporated.
But this is a political decision in the sense that if the city is willing to allocate funds to fight the state, that's what we're talking about.
I don't think it's the state. I think what happens is if we pass the provisions as we've drafted it,
Then
and
they get
a
challenged in
lawsuit.
court.
Yes,
But
and we
but-
pay.
well, the state, you're right, could jump in if we extend a moratorium and just take over, which is a very real, I would think, possibility if we go down a path when they've warned us not to. Or a developer tries to get his project, and he thinks that we are being too conservative and our provisions are illegal, and they sue us, and not only do we allocate funds for that, but we should allocate also attorney's fees if we lose, because that's what the state in this 4-page memo says, be prepared to also pay attorney's fees if you proceed and lose.
Right.
Well, all those things are true, but let's look at this globally. I wanted to say that staff did a really good job of incorporating everything we talked about before this letter showed up. They listened to us, and I know that Anita has some things she would like to work on, and I'm sure there are others as well, but I think it was very accurate what went in here. I think what the public is talking about has to do with the philosophical approach of city council, before city council, current city council, where there was a concept, and I was on the planning commission at that time also, that if you raise the limit, this was what that area was going to be, this maximum height. And then we subsequently had state law come in and saying, oh, not exactly. And so would that decision have been the same if people knew at that past city council that what they were saying was the absolute height is 45 feet, when in fact, by dint of the state, if they knew that was coming down the pike, would they have made that change before? I don't know. It's a political decision. In this case, it really is a choice of where, if anything, the town is going to draw the line in the sand. Because what John Barrow is right. What's happening, the state is saying one size fits all. Los Angeles is the same as a housing situation in crisis as your sleepy little town here in Los Altos and in Atherton and all the small towns in the area who have a different animal that they're dealing with. They're completely built out. And the only place where we have ever been able to look to get denser development is along the El Camino corridor, which seems appropriate because it is a major thoroughfare. But what we have not been able to address adequately is the other part of that, which is if we increase density by saying let's go up and get more units per acre so we can get a diversity of housing, that's a tack you could take. That doesn't address the fact that more people is more traffic. And so we're solving one problem, and it's like squeezing a balloon. It's popping out the other way, and we're going to have to deal with that piece of it. And there isn't an A-plus solution to any of this. That's the problem. But what the state is saying is, from the state's point of view, we are in a housing crisis, the entire state. And they're saying, and I believe we can make a case for this, if you go to the state and say, look, we are making an effort, this is what we're doing, and here's what we've got. There is a definition of affordable housing. It is based on income, and it's also set by the state. And we don't have to worry about, is it defined? It's defined. And you know what? If someone is in an affordable unit and they have a 12-foot ceiling, well, I hope they enjoy it, because you know what? I would enjoy it. Now, if someone wants to say I can get 4 stories in 45 feet, well, that means that they are going to make an effort to do that. And maybe they won't make the same choices. And maybe they will make smaller units. I don't know. What I do see is that we're not going to solve this. At the very least, it's a statewide problem. We're not going to solve it with this particular ordinance. And for tonight, I agree with other commissioners that I can't deal with it until I get our city attorney to say, look, I like our ordinance. I'm willing to stand behind it. And then he can go to city council and say, council, we can beat this. We can meet this by showing good intention, even if it's the road to hell, to get more units in. But at this point, I can't vote on it tonight either.
I would say with only one additional thing, and that is the sentiment of what we're hearing tonight does not support what the majority of this planning commission expressed to staff at the last time that we took this up. And I think the question needs to go to the city attorney and say, this is what the majority of the planning commission has been supporting, but this other thing is what we're hearing from the community. Is what the community wants supportable? Because I have no doubt that this fundamentally, like the height piece of this, would be supported by the state. I mean, that's basically what they're telling us. The question to the attorney is, can we do what the community wants or not?
Right. And that would be helpful for both us and city council.
Sure.
Because it's taking it will be an unpopular. Right.
From the state's point of view, it's incredibly unpopular.
But I would say the one size solution fits all is one aspect of it that we can criticize. But I don't think we pay enough attention to the fact that affordable housing makes sense in every town. And I disagree with the speaker who says it doesn't make sense in our town. If you want a city, and live in a city with grocery stores and restaurants and gardens and schools and libraries and hospitals, and shops, then you need to find housing for all of those people in your town. And so I think that I think we forget that the genesis of this density bonus regulation, the reason we did this is to protect our town. It's not going to open up a can of worms. We're actually trying to put a lid on the can of worms. And the only question is this, can we go back to 30 feet, which we'll get that answer. But the purpose of this, and I think with further refinement once we have better guidance, will be actually to keep our ability to control what gets built in this town from the state taking over. So I think we have to somehow get that message out a little bit better.
So there's been a lot of talk tonight about the change in 2010, and we haven't gotten anything since then. You know, it's been 7 years, and only a couple properties have come up. One has been on moratorium for a year, and one got approved, and hence we're all here now, and we know the history there.
Colonnade got built.
What's that? Oh, Colonnade,
got
that's
built.
true. Colonnade got built, too. So we have had some action.
And Whole Foods went in. I mean, there have been there've been some commercial, but in
Right.
terms of residential,
Well,
it's
then
just
you're
been
further
Colonnade and
making the
48.
point that actually things have happened, but they cannot happen until there are properties available. So the staff had put together a map. There were red colors, I think, for the high potential. But things aren't going to turn over all at once, and in fact, some of them won't turn over. So we have seen things. That was actually my point. And I would argue that those who say we haven't, that's not very accurate. I think that we actually need all housing. We need affordable housing, but we need all housing. Condos are actually affordable relative to houses in Los Altos. The condos were so short, so many people want to, downsize may not be the right word, but older people want to get out of their single-family homes, go to condos, that they get snapped up right away at crazy prices. So not to say we don't need affordable. One thing in Los Altos, affordable housing is not low-income housing. True. The median income in Santa Clara, which is then used to ratchet to your below-market, very low, et cetera, none of those people are low-income, really. So, which is, again, one of the quirks why the whole state is in crisis, I think, in terms of housing. Although, and I will say one more thing, although the density bonus law is one size fits all, there are many criteria. Actually, one of our speakers tonight echoed something that I heard last week by the president of Silicon Valley Leadership Group, and points to a ratio of housing per the number of jobs. And Los Altos is woefully short on the number of jobs that we have and the number of housings of supply. So the problem is not, well, because we're sleepy Los Altos, we don't have to put in, make efforts to put in more housing. We do. And that's, again, part of the impetus why we've been focused on the CT zone for where we can put the density.
Well, and the other thing is, in doing so, there's another piece to the traffic problem, because if people don't have to commute from Gilroy to get to your town to provide the service jobs in our local restaurants and supermarkets, then you don't have traffic. I mean, you can actually reduce traffic by providing more housing, which sounds counterintuitive, but in fact, if you can get closer, you don't necessarily need to drive. So,
right.
And action for tonight.
Right, so action for tonight. So I know that we have, so if we talk about some specific suggestions we could make, that then requires, we're going to have another whole discussion, it requires 2 iterations. Is that, can we hold, or is it?
Do you want me to share my list of what I've collected from your comments?
Yes, but we probably have more that haven't been made.
15 more.
So the question is, we keep that list, but we could actually continue
and make a bigger list.
And make a bigger list at the same time with the input from city attorney as to his position representing the city relative to this document from the state. So I move that we continue this meeting to a date certain, which would be,
I would recommend moving it to your next meeting, August the 17th.
okay,
That's 2 weeks from tonight.
and that at that time, we can do that, we can do it to a date certain, providing we have adequate input from the city attorney before that time.
In the input you're requesting from the city attorney, one is to review the letter and provide comments, the state's letter, provide comments in response to what the state has shared with us, that we have the city attorney or that office's representative here at the next PTC meeting. And the question, can the city do what the community wants us to do with
Well,
respect to?
if city council deems that that is the direction they want to take in representing their constituents.
I think that bigger
I think it's
question-
really, how does he see the risk if the city were to make the
back.
changes in the CT zone? And I would point out that one of the things we're proposing to do is to move multifamily housing from a conditional use to a specific
Permitted
purpose, which is a big change, especially if the state is contemplating ministerial approval, which is what SB 35 is. And so we're basically saying, yeah, we're willing to go to ministerial approval on housing. We're not willing to do it at that level. Okay, we want to change some things there. But to me, that's a big give. That's a big give to the state, and I think it's part of the counter argument to what they've written.
Which is what I meant when I said if we can show our intent,
Yep.
that we
Exactly.
can then say if this one-size-fits-all doesn't fit us, our intent is to meet the state goal, but we want to do it on our own terms, whatever those terms are that we can agree on.
And I think that, a couple of us mentioned the in lieu program as an option. I mean, can we please have some information on where that
We
would fit
can.
in what-
We've got the ordinance drafted, and we have a strategy for
Oh,
that.
you have an ordinance.
I haven't gotten a second yet, guys.
Okay.
I have a
Remind me the motion.
I'll second it.
Continue to a
Continue
date
to a
certain,
date
which is
certain.
August
I will
17th.
second the
Seconded.
motion.
Seconded.
And then I
And
have
we
a
can
question
discuss
before
more.
we vote, and that is, for those things where, like, I have a number of comments and suggestions and things like that, is it permitted, desired, not desired, whatever, that if those of us who have such would write them up and send them to John? Is that still an okay thing to do?
Oh, yes.
It is.
Outside of the public
Because then John
environment?
will distribute it
To
in the
And
public.
highlight in yellow,
Right.
right.
Which was, you
Yes,
guys did a great
yes.
job.
Mhm. Right.
I have a bunch for you.
Okay.
All right, so then we have that. So if we have non-philosophical, I guess, inputs.
Yeah, but
tweaks.
realizing we'd have to provide those right away, because by the time they try and roll that into what they're doing and do notice for the next meeting, we've got a tight timeline.
When do you need them by, John?
Well, Monday would be great. If
Okay.
you could do that by Monday, it'd be very helpful for us.
And one of the things that came up, we keep trying to separate it. I think one of the speakers mentioned, the PUD conversation. I think if you're going to slip it in, I know you're clarifying for us, but, there's sensitivity to that topic, and it wasn't noticed as that. So, either notice it or don't, let's not just slip it in. Make sure it's clearly.
And I think we also should acknowledge that a lot of people came out tonight, and this is really remarkable for a PTC meeting, and we ought to reassure the public that we have heard what they have said, and that they don't all feel they have to come back in 2 weeks and say it all over again.
That's true, but I
But
also
you're-
would like to point out that the real essence of this is going to be at City Council. And therefore, anybody who's made a comment tonight and really cares deeply is more than welcome to show up at Planning and Transportation Commission. We love to have people come out. We really do, because we like to hear from the public. But the real decision-making is not done here. And so if you really want to be heard, you need to speak to the people who you elect to represent you.
But thank you all for coming.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have a motion, and did we had a second on that? So all those in favor of continuing to a date certain, which would be August 17th, say aye.
Aye.
And we've told you the condition. Anyone opposed? No? Okay, so 5, nothing with 2 absent, and we really need our attorney here. All right, let's move on to the next. Oh, yeah. Are there enough for? I don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, there's one for each of us.
Oh, for those in attendance, great. Okay.
Agenda.
Yes, agenda. And could I ask everyone, when you go, hold the conversations till you get outside? That would be great. Thank you. All right, Commissioner reports and comments.
Nada.
Was there a meeting?
Was there a meeting? We don't have, maybe Bahi or, there must have been a meeting.
No, there was not.
No, there was no meeting? Oh, that's right, it was July. Okay.
They were on vacation.
They were on recess. So then, any potential future agenda items?
What's the chances we'll get the in lieu, at least to look at it in 2 weeks?
We will try, still want our city attorney to take a close look at the ordinance, to give you a peek at it.
That'd be really nice.
Can I just ask a procedural question? Does it make any sense to, I would imagine that there's certain things that the attorney wants to discuss, not necessarily in a public forum.
He discusses with staff and with city council.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah, I think it's very rare for a city attorney to go into a closed session with members of the Planning and Transportation Commission.
Yeah.
Got it.
We would allow him to advise on that.
Okay. Are we, Anita, did you?
We were going to go over calendar as to who's
Oh,
assigned
yeah, I don't
for
have
what.
it with me.
Anybody have it?
You have the,
Does either of you have access to the PTC rep to city council calendar at this instant, like on the computer or?
What
I
is
can
this?
tell you when my,
I mean, each of us put it on our
One of the
individual
speakers.
calendar.
The speaker from the Silicon Valley Home
Right.
Housing Group.
which is a different, actually, I'll try to get the thing I referenced as well and see, compare them, but
I
Tuesday.
guess, can you guys just recirculate?
Yeah, if you just somebody would just recirculate it. 'Cause I don't have it. I'm sorry, but it was, and I'm the Jerry Moisen on that list. So
So mine, the next one I have is October 24th.
I have the end of September.
David's looking for it.
And I think I'm somewhere in between there.
But I think Yvonne sent out an updated with your name.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
I didn't see it.
Or perhaps it didn't get to you, who it should have gotten to, of all people.
I just need the list, please. That's all.
Okay. So maybe David or John, can you have Yvonne send that to Anita? All right. And then I think that means we're done, right? Okay, adjourned.